Welcome at our third day at Circle on our expert panel on in this week of green buildings. Dutch Green Building Week, the World Green Building Week. Plenty of opportunities to discuss all the green buildings and all the impact on green buildings. On this show, we'll talk about circular barriers and how to break them. My name is Petron van Heel. I'm sector banker real estate within ABN AMRO. And at the table, I have a few guests who, from a different perspective, will talk about their experiences in circularity, their barriers and opportunities, and how to move forward in circular economy. I'm very proud to have on the table Cecile, Jan and Hein. Cecile, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself first, then we'll move to Jan, and then Hein can introduce himself, and you'll start a presentation about ABN AMRO's experience in circular financing. Thank you. Perfect. Cecile.
So I'm Cecile Van Appen. I am one of the co-founders of Cooperate, which for lack of a better word is a consulting firm. But we always try to rethink business models when it comes to the circular economy. So actually we think that we need to also rethink the business model of our consulting firm to not just look at being paid by the hour, but also being paid for the results that we actually achieve, with eventually the hope of becoming obsolete. But aside from being a consultant, we also proactively take on research, but also create ventures that help scale the circular economy and circular thinking.
So you're a consultant and an entrepreneur.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great combination. Jan.
I'm Jan Jongert, one of the founders of Superview Studios. We operate from Rotterdam. We started in 1997, so already are active in trying to change construction to circular construction for over 22 years. And with this, we have built up a lot of practice from originally small scale now to larger scale housing projects and dwelling that we are currently constructing.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks to be here. My name is Hein Brekelmans. I work at the Sustainable Finance Desk of ABN AMRO. And I will start with a short presentation of about 10 minutes, and I will guide you through why we find this an important topic as ABN AMRO, what difficulties we see as a bank in financing the circular economy, and what difficulties we see within the system in financing the circular economy. So those are the barriers, and I would like to end with some nice examples we were able to finance despite all those barriers. So first of all, why do we find this important as ABN AMRO? We have adopted a new strategy since September 2018. We said we want to accelerate the sustainability shift. We have 3 pillars, and one of those pillars is that we would like to support our clients in their transition towards sustainability. We have founded the Sustainable Finance Desk. That's a desk that is there to help all our people in the field, to help our clients to make that transition towards a sustainable business model. We do that by means of 3 pillars. We say we want to increase the knowledge and the commitment on the different subjects, so circularity, but also energy transition, social impact, all those kinds of difficult subjects for the people in the field. We would like to help them with that. We also develop new propositions so that we have sustainable products for our clients. And third of all, we would like to report and monitor on all we do on sustainability. And we have said mid-2017, Kees van Dijkhuizen, our former CEO, said, okay, we want to have financed 1 billion in circular assets and 100 circular deals by the end of 2020. By the time we said that, we thought, okay, we're going to make that easily. We're going to do 1.5 billion or 2 billion, I don't know. But during that road, during that journey, we have found out that it's really difficult not to finance the smaller companies, but to find the bigger companies to finance finance circularity. Well, first of all, we said together with ING and Rabobank, we need to have a uniform definition on circularity, because by then there were all kinds of definitions. But we said, in order also to prevent from greenwashing, we said to each other, okay, the 3 largest banks of the Netherlands, they say, okay, if a transaction is by means of this document, it's a very readable document, it's 2 or 3 pages, and we have typified 7 business models in there, and if it complies to one of the 7 business models and it has a positive impact, then we can say it's a circular transaction. So back to the ambition, we have done right now 60 transactions adding up to 592 million, and we still have 3 months to go. So
60 over 100 and
60 over 100, 529 million over 1 billion. Yes,
okay.
Correct. Yeah. So what are those? What are the difficulties? I will talk about the system later, but I would first like to talk about the bank self. This is somebody who's upside down. And why is this lady upside down? Because circularity turns everything upside down. Every time we go with a circular finance transaction to a colleague of risk management, they say, yeah, but the balance sheet is extending, the tenor is much too long, the ownership is somewhere else. We can't finance this. So our models are not aligned with the circularity. They are for linear business models. Circularity looks forwards, and within linear financing transactions, we also always look at history. So that's very difficult for us to grasp. But we have 10 colleagues out of 50 from risk that are especially designated to do those deals, and they are getting up to speed, but it's taking a lot of time. Well, these are child shoes. It's an immature market, and immature markets and banks, innovations and banks are not a happy marriage. It's always new. It's mostly proven technology, but not really proven technology. No track record, and so on. So we would like to do something in circularity, but actually it's more equity-like. So it's more for investors than for banking. Then this picture is the legal complexity of those transactions. So the ownership is somewhere else. We see that, let's say that you want to finance a product as a service company. You would like to finance that as you finance a windmill park of 1 billion, but documentation costs in comparison to the volume of a circular transaction, it just simply doesn't fit. It's too complex from a. So we need to have standardized documents, and we need to be able to replicate those documents in order. So there are many legal challenges. That's the main point. Now I come back to the system, and this is the sign for an unlevel, something that's not equal. And what I have found out in 4 years sustainable finance is that if you look at linear companies versus circular companies, there is simply a non-level playing field. With circular, if you start your business doing circular, you add value. You add value to the society that is not perceived by the financial markets as such. So you add ecological value, you add societal value, but the shareholders don't perceive it as real value because they only look at money.
It's not in their sum yet.
It's not in their sum yet, yes. And they say it is in their sum, but in the end, the shareholders and the few companies that we see, the larger companies that we see that are making their first steps into circularity, I can name 2, IKEA and Lidl. It's very easy because they are not listed. That's why they can do this. And if we look at, for instance, Unilever, everybody knows the story of Paul Polman. He has just been sent away by the shareholders because it costed too much money. So value creation versus short-term financial gains. We need to speak another language with each other. We need to see, we need to define impact, and we need to talk in the financial world based on impact and not only based on value creation and not on short-term financial gains. Then what is totally true, we need to work together within the value chain. So that's something of circularity, so different parties need to work within the value chain. But if you have a very simple value chain, you have a farmer, you have a food manufacturer, and you have a retailer, and you say, okay, you need to work together in order to get that circular business model right. The shareholder of the retailer will say, why should I work together with the food manufacturer and the farmer? I make the most money. So of course, you need to work within the value chain, but there are no incentives to work within the value chain. this is something that is also from the report from Cecile. That's depreciation. We say assets, you need to depreciate assets, well, in 5 or 10 years to zero, and you are fiscally incentivized to depreciate even faster. But within the circular economy, we say no, assets, they remain their value. So that's also contrary. So that's also something that is in our system that is fully linear, but it is the opposite of what we would like to achieve within the circular economy. Then we have VAT, so that's BTW, VAT, the value-added tax. If you say as a small company, okay, I'm going to buy second-hand products, I'm going to refurbish them and I'm going to sell them again, you need to pay VAT 2 times. So that's also, again, a disadvantage if you want to start your business in circularity and you start refurbishing goods, you have a disadvantage in comparison to the linear companies. And then, to my modest opinion, one of the most important ones, the circular economy is material extensive. That's what we want to achieve. We want to use less materials. In many instances, especially in the building and the real estate business, in many instances this means, so if you demolish a building, for instance, this means you need extra labor. And if you look at on a European level, 51% of all taxes come from labor and only 9% come from resources. In other words, we incentivize all companies to work as linear as possible, because if you kick all the employees out and you use more materials, it is better for your P&L. So that's something that is, and there is a foundation in the Netherlands. They are already active from 2008, but this was already said by the founder of by Eckhard Winse in 1994. There's a little movie in 2 minutes, and he already said it in 1994. How stupid it is that our fiscal system works like this. He said you need to put the tax on labor down, and you need to put the tax on resources up. And I think especially in the time that we are living right now, COVID-19, we see unemployment rising. So I think this is more relevant than ever.
And this is a very interesting topic. We'll discuss this one later, because you guys have this manifesto for the construction world with over 400 parties signing a petition in favor of this mechanism.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So we have said, why find we this as important as ABN AMRO? We have said there are many barriers for us as a bank. There are systemic barriers, but despite that fact, we were able to finance some companies. So out of those 52, I'm going to show you a few. The first one is Elements. They are able to construct a full building in their fabric, and then they can move it towards a certain location. So that doesn't have the, and now my English goes bad, don't have the stikstof problem.
Nitrogen problem.
No, they don't have the nitrogen problem. And this is fully modular built, and we have been able to finance it. But why was it difficult? It was new, it was not proven technology, and we financed together with an informal investor. We financed together with a formal investor. We financed 50% of the first house, and the informal investment also did 50%. And now we are getting used to it, and now we are able to pre-finance all those orders they get. Most of you will notice this is the Bias Kwartier. That's one of the largest transactions we have done within our circular portfolio. A beautiful example of circular inputs, because they try to reuse the materials from demolishing the old building that is over there. And then something that's not really from the construction or building sector, but that's aircraft end-of-life solutions. They buy old airplanes and they get all the materials out and they sell. Well, a lot of people collect, for instance, airplane seats. They sell the airplane seats and so on, but also the material. And this was also a difficult one, because it also was a startup. But yeah, we had to. The guy studied at TU Delft, so we really felt good with the entrepreneur, and that's the reason why we were able to do it. Fibers, this is something that this is a solution for the plastic problem. They are able to, from elephant grass, they are able to make a plastic-like product. And also here, we financed this company without even made revenue of €1, but they had contracts with big companies, and that's why we were felt comfortable to finance this. And then last but not least, that's Mitsubishi Elevator Europe. Mitsubishi, that's an elevator we have here in Circle. We pay per ride for this elevator. It was also very difficult because it has a long tenor, a very legal complex because the elevator does not belong to us. So we have a recht van opstal on the elevator here in Circle. But together with Mitsubishi, we were able to finance this company, and now they are really stepping up and not selling, but leasing more elevators to the market.
Also had quite a lot of transaction costs, but now they're scaling up, making good for all this extra costing.
Perfect add-on indeed. If you look at only if you look at only this transaction, we did not make any money out of it because we had so many hours in talking with lawyers how to write this properly down in the.
It's pioneering.
Yeah,
it's pioneering.
Yeah.
It's inspiring as well. We still have like 60 cases within 3 years, very on a high diversity. But I see a lot of barriers related to like old school way of working, old school way of financing. It's in the systems. It's fighting against economies of scale from a linear economy. Yeah. It's good to see that we overcome them partly, but we need more speeding up. Cecile, how do you see this? Because you're advising a lot of companies who would like to move forward in circularity. This is the first step, awareness and getting on track.
Yes, well, what I see is that when we talk about the circular economy, we tend to focus primarily on the technical aspects of the transition. So we're going to be using different materials, we're going to be reusing construction materials. But I think if we really want to scale and create a circular economy as a whole, we need to look at the systemic aspects that we're facing with every experiment that we do. And if we're not able to identify them and then break through them, I'm afraid we'll stay in the pioneering phase. We'll keep experimenting, but we need to scale.
Do we expect it? Are we too much hurry? Do we expect too much of it? Haven't we just started building circular economy? I mean,
I don't think so.
Experimenting?
Let's listen to Jan. He's been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 12 years. I'm in a hurry.
Yeah, we should be in a hurry.
We should be in a hurry.
Should all be.
I think we need to be in a hurry, and I think that we need to start moving out of the experimenting phase, really looking at how we can scale this type of thinking. And I think that the only way to scale it is to make it economically attractive. And that's why it's interesting that we're having this conversation in your house, because I think that you see a lot of entrepreneurs who are also facing this issue. Yeah. We need to make it economically attractive, and currently that's not the case.
No. But many of the entrepreneurs start working on a technical side. I mean, they all have a product or an idea and would like to make it. They start designing, Jan, and then from design trying to make a product which is more circular. And then the difficulties start, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting also, Hein, you mentioning it's like the world upside down. What we actually acknowledged after working 2-3 years in our perspective is that we need to reverse the design process. So that was the main first step that we did, is not first have a great idea of a shape and then start to find the materials with it that have to be produced, but actually first try to find the materials and actually realize a design with those existing components and materials. And actually this puts you in a completely different position as an architect, because you also become a researcher on materials, and since all this knowledge is not available, you need to find all these resources, but also develop all kind of new tools to support this new circular way of working, which is not.
And if you make those resources more valuable or more worth because of taxes, you're more incentivized to think about different design because you want to have the materials back after so many years.
Yeah, that's one way indeed, that you revalue
Yeah.
the materials. The other way, of course, is indeed that we think indeed the materials are too cheap. So
Yeah,
in our practice, we always put more labor. The contractors need to do more. The part of the gray cost that is generally not accounted for in new products are part of our process.
I think you're right, but then you're fighting the system, and you're trying to change the system. Where you started, you have to rethink the design process as well.
Yeah.
Kind of start with the end in mind. And you're doing this for 20 years. How many of your professional colleagues are thinking like this? I mean, do students teach this in architectural education?
Yeah, we have quite a track record of teaching at many different schools in the Netherlands and abroad. We even started a company in China actually to scale up this way of thinking on the Chinese level. So I think that's really interesting. Actually, this whole process and developing other parts, now other architects can start to benefit from those efforts. And actually, since we see the climate goals being set more strictly by governments, more and more clients want circular construction, and also we see the amount of architecture offices really dedicated towards this growing. We will announce a very interesting, new collaboration, like in a month's time, in the Netherlands, to actually scale up also the design skills that now are, still at a very limited level.
Well, that's good news. So education is changing. Clients are asking for it. You'll start scaling up, all without breaking the system. You can already break barriers in circularity.
Well, I think, like Cecile is mentioning, it is possible to operate in a circular way at this moment, but it is dependent on single subsidies, pilots, one-times, small-scale projects. And there are a couple of barriers that really prevent us from growing to a bigger scale that is currently necessary.
So pre-corona, we sometimes met abroad, like in other cities where we were invited to discuss about circularity and our opportunities and the things we see in the Netherlands. This Dutch Green Building Week is titled Made in Holland. In some cases, we think we are kind of front runners in this circular economy. Hein, you've traveled around as well. You've been asked questions from abroad. How do we finance it? And I'm curious how you see it. Are we really front runners? Are we pioneers with the best examples?
I think on circularity, I have some examples of some experience abroad. I've been to Japan once to talk about circularity, and their circularity is recycling, full stop. So when we told them, no, this is much more. You need to think in the design phase already, what you are going to do, blah blah blah. And recycling for us is not circular economy, because it's the least option within
downcycling.
It's downcycling indeed. And I think there are some other. I think Finland is also very. But I think in circularity we are. I can say we are front runner.
Yeah, Cecile, would you?
I agree to a point, but just to challenge you, I'm going to say,
very good.
The Netherlands, we're a Western economy, and we overuse. Our footprint is way too large to even consider being called a circular economy. So even though I think that I agree with you to a degree that we have a lot of circular ideas, entrepreneurs, a great circular traction in the Netherlands, I think that the challenges we have to actually move down to one footprint per person are so massive that I have difficulty calling us a pioneer. And I'd maybe look at Cuba. Island, maybe dictatorship helps. I'm not going to, promote dictatorship, but I think that the way...
Strong leadership.
Strong leadership might be a good nuanced way of putting that. But they live, their economy is based on what they have.
Yeah.
And I think that we still import-export so much that our footprint is too large.
From that point of view, I fully agree.
Yeah.
So we're trying to improve. We're trying to become more efficient and better in circularity. However, we still use a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that the gap is massive. And that's why we should be in a hurry.
Yeah, so from an international perspective, you can see great examples in the Netherlands. There's a lot of entrepreneurs. We make little steps, and we have this. I'll get back to this manifesto because we're scaling up as well. However, we have to change our attitudes towards consumption as well. That's the
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at the latest figure, about the 1% of the richest people.
Exactly.
Exploiting. No, what is that?
They emit as much carbon dioxide as
the
50%
lower
of the-
50%.
the lower 50%.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, thanks.
Jan, on the examples on building side, internationally, we now have some circular initiatives, some circular buildings, a bit more every day. There's a new company or new project startup saying we're circular.
Yeah. In this respect, I see both Denmark doing quite well. There are some similar companies like us also scaling up more than expected. Switzerland is doing quite okay. But still, most of these experiments I see as the quick fixes. So how, with the least effort, we can still try to make it as circular as possible. That's maybe interesting to compare to China. Speaking of strong leadership, is that the mentality about circularity is not something. It's not related to downcycling, but it's more looking at the whole ecosystem of industries and trying to start to link them and look at valuable interactions between them. So. The idea about what circular economy is different from many other countries.
And I think there's a lot to win from the quick wins, the experimenting, and then looking at the total ecosystem, like the buy-in and the output. But then the next step we'll have to change the system as well. We'll have to change tax incentives, or we'll have to change behavior and perhaps using tax incentives for the good of it. And here's this. Last year you started this manifesto for the construction industry in the Netherlands. How many people signed? How many companies signed it by now? Like
Jan
400.
knows how many people have signed it.
Yeah, it was a manifesto where we indeed tried to gather support of the construction industry, because we see that in most of the other companies also trying to get to the next level, the taxes on labor is really limiting them and trying to, limiting them in adding more labor and using less resources. So we made a promotion about this and have, within 2 months we got 415 of companies that are active in the construction industry that now support this. We want to grow this amount, and I hope this broadcast also helps this in order to actually have a good backup for the change that we want to reach. But together with Cecile, we're also setting up a monitoring system to actually support this from a more scientific base to see what change actually is needed, what percentages need to shift in order to...
Yeah. And monitor system, you're doing research for live cases, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, so what we've done is basically we acknowledge that this is an issue. Of course, we have the XX project, who has done a lot of policy work already in the Netherlands and in Europe. But now we've said, okay, let's bring that to practice. So let's look at least 4 cases. We might expand that number a little bit. 2 construction cases and 2 demolition cases, where we're going to be looking at the amount of resources that are used, both in terms of energy and materials, but also at the labor costs. And we're going to ask those projects to also look at linear alternatives. So if you wouldn't have done it in a circular way, what would you have sourced otherwise? And what we're going to then do is put different fiscal systems on that. So we're going to look at different taxation schemes on the labor side and on the resources side in order to actually support our hypothesis that the business case for circular construction will become more attractive when the taxes on labor go down and the taxes on resources go up.
Yeah. So after 22 years and 12 years, after so many years of experimenting and advising and starting new ventures, and now we're starting to change the system. Did the government also sign this construction manifesto? Are they in?
I don't think they've signed it, but we do have support from the government, financial support in order to do this project. And I think it's really important because this is the first real life case that we're going to be assessing.
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to be bringing those results to the government. And I think that will help them in the discussion on, what are the consequences of such a fiscal shift? Because I think currently we don't oversee those consequences. And that makes it very difficult to change the system.
So when do we sit on this table and discuss the results of your report?
The results next year, I think.
Next year we'll have the results.
But if we want to talk about when have we actually changed the system?
Oh well, I mean, tax is only a part of it. As Hein already mentioned, we have on our finance side, we also have a lot to do, like depreciation or long-term value, different appetite for risk. Different ownerships, different type at the balance sheet. So there's quite a lot to do on the finance side of circular economy as well.
Yeah, but I think that's.
I think we need a system shift there as well. Not
a system shift there as well, for sure. But what's also very important that the equity, the investing part of the world also needs to pick up the circular alternatives, and that's done. Well, on a
you will need to pick up. I don't know.
They need to step into those circular companies. Once
do.
they have stepped in and they have shown its proven technology, track record, and so on, then we as a bank are able to finance. But you don't see many investors stepping into this circular world because they still make too much money with the linear world.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't help telling them you need to step in. I mean, there needs to be a better opportunity for them as well.
Yeah. And for us, it takes years to see those models, to learn from those models. For instance, we have a small reservation. That's what we call the sustainable envelope, and there we do small companies. We finance circular companies, and I can tell that Homey Paper Use, they make washing machines, and they lease the washing machines. But we said to Homey Paper Use, okay, fine, we are willing to finance you, but then we would like to look with you together on the data, because we also want to learn on those business models. That's for us very important. Once we understand those business models, then it's for us it's more comfortable to start.
Then we can explain it to risk and to shareholders and to other companies as well.
But I think one of the things, and you've already highlighted that, is that our entire financial ecosystem is very much based upon assessing risks rather than looking at opportunities. And I think that in the circular area, maybe the opportunities might outweigh the risks. So what I see now is, there's a lot of news on climate risk becoming financial, which makes me, in a weird way, happy, because I think, it's starting to change how investors look at sustainability. But on the circular side, we also need to start looking at those opportunities, and it's not just risk-based.
Yeah, and if a company is using a virgin material that is depleting very, very soon, then for us it's also risk mitigating if they say, okay, we're going to reuse our materials. So it can work in that way. So,
But I see some entrepreneurs. Tomorrow we have Urban Mining Collective here, New Horizon, for example. But in this Urban Mining Collective, there's entrepreneurs who really see value in second-hand material, who really see value in existing buildings which come to an end of life, where so far only little companies or few people have seen the advantages of. So I also see this shift from the pioneers in the construction and real estate market.
But isn't that
Although
also forced by legislation that's coming from 2023, that they see this coming and they see this opportunity? Because I think that helps also.
There will be more refurbishment in the light of this obligation for energy labels, but this is really on the material side, on the circular economy side.
Okay.
Jan, this is your world as well. You're in the buildings. How easy is it for you if you start a new project? You'll have to explain the client what circular economy is, or are there more and more clients asking for it? And next step, would they agree, for example, to use second-hand materials in a new building?
Yeah, well, that's indeed. By the way, we joined the Urban Mining Collective recently.
Yeah.
So we are collaborating
Welcome.
with this growing amount of companies that is actually stepping into this. So it's very interesting to also support this new economy. What is already possible? What is already possible these days? But of course, like the first 15 years that we operated, no one saw a future in the reuse of materials and components, because we don't want to downcycle them. We want to reclaim them and repair them and upcycle them in their new uses of buildings. And I think it takes a little bit of effort that we had to do, but like also the mentality of aesthetics, we see changing, that actually people start to appreciate a building that has stories of their materials in them, so that when you see, when you walk around, you can actually tell stories about what this material has been and processes that it has went through. So I think, the culture is also shifting a little bit towards more appreciation for living buildings.
Okay. But do you see a lot of competitions where circularity is becoming part of it? I mean, there's a lot of focus on energy transition.
Very much. Not so many. I was just a jury last week for a great competition by a housing corporation, Thales in Nijmegen. 61 entries, and the entries were all judged on circularity, energy, social cohesion, and how they fit into their surroundings. Very strict rules they had to comply to, and actually really interesting projects came out. And what made it interesting is that Thales, the housing corporation, promised the winner that it is going to be built. So this is now what's happening. There's a great design company won this competition, and they are now going to realize this one, and with support of all this knowledge. So we see that housing corporations actually currently as a front runner in development of dwelling and social housing, also having the task by the government to actually be a front runner in this, is more and more developing the tools and techniques and gaining knowledge about this. And we're helping a couple of them.
That's nice to hear. Housing corporations as early adapters of circularity.
Yeah, on a larger scale, and that's really very interesting, because as well, they, with the very minimum budgets they have to work with, they have to look very precisely on the business model for their housing, and exactly like what is the value for both the renter and the corporation afterwards. And we see very interesting combinations also appearing where, for instance, housing collectives of future dwellers, they collaborate with the housing corporation and collectively set up
Is there also a lot of sharing in there, like sharing a washing machine, or sharing
facilities
a car
and services?
Shared space. That's what the competition winner in this competition did, was indeed making individual houses a little bit smaller, but actually offering a lot more collective space where they can actually have a workshop and collective
great.
use.
Yeah, but I see, you might call it greenwashing. You see smaller houses for the same price, and then you get serviced facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
we see that as well happening, so that it's more the business model becomes.
I don't call that circular. Yeah, well, you could call. Can we call this circularity, Hein? Would this be financed under the?
Well, as long as you are fully
ING,
transparent
ABN AMRO?
on what you do, as long as you are fully transparent and you explain to the renters this is the way we, then I think you could say that, because if you have, if you start sharing washing machines and so on, then it's well, we call that
You're reducing.
reducing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the last 5 minutes. Cecile, I would like to ask you, because many companies come to your company in order to get advice. I think they already had the first barrier. That's they would like to do something in circularity. That's why they come at your consultancy company. So that's barrier one. But what's then the next? What kind of barriers do you see, and how do you break them?
Well, I think that the main barrier, because of course we've talked a lot about the systemic barriers, but when we're consulting one organization, you can't break those barriers. But it's actually one of the aspects that Hein also discussed in his presentation is what we always tend to look at as the supply chain collaboration, because you cannot create a circular economy or a circular project on your own. You need collaboration. So what we often do is to make a systemic scan to actually look at where are there split incentives that actually hinder the circular outcome. And in order to create the circular outcome, you need to then create a shared incentive with, for example, suppliers or clients, in order to actually create a collective business case. Because like Hein said also in his presentation, if someone's making all the money, there's no eagerness to collaborate. But we need to create an attractive scenario whereby you are willing to collaborate, because the shared outcome is larger than the outcome that you would achieve on your own.
There is a subsidy right now from the government that's from 60K maximum, I think, in order to stimulate that cooperation.
Any nice examples to share with us? I mean, like really practical example.
A very practical one is that we recently actually worked for a caterer, so in the food system. And there, what we actually saw is that the way that they worked with their suppliers. So on the one hand, they were working towards minimizing food waste on the client side.
Yeah.
But when we analyzed the supply chain, we actually saw that on the procurement side, they were being incentivized to buy large volumes. And when they created a large volume on the supply side, they would be getting a bonus.
Okay.
So even though you want to minimize food waste, at the beginning of the value chain, there's a contradictory incentive, and we see that a lot. So we're still in an economy where high volumes, low margins are the way to work, and that, of course, is what we also need to challenge.
Really cool example of this collaboration in the supply chain and shared incentives. I guess you have many of these in construction as well, and real estate. I mean, it's a long chain. Jan, any thoughts on this one? Do you have what your clients, which are their largest barriers, and any nice example how you've overwon it?
Single largest barrier is always the economy, so we are always fighting to make the price to actually realize a design that is as buildable and as as economical as a new construction building. So that's something that we are constantly trying to manage.
This is so in this construction and real estate sector, we will always steer on price per square meter instead of life cycle costing, for example. This would already be a step.
Exactly. And another, I think, obstruction is like after Corona, what we probably will see is that the amount of office space will go down with the increased amount of distance working. Actually, currently in the books, office space has a very high value. So if you want to transform it to another program, it actually costs more than having an empty building. So also in the bookkeeping part, there needs to be a little change in order to make transformations of buildings possible. If you look at circular construction, you start with actually readapting your current construction. So that's where it would start. But the books actually and the financing prohibits this very often.
Financing, Hein. It's back to financing. We're at the end of our meeting. We started with the financing. I'm really happy to see we have 60 of 100 and almost 600 million of another billion. I don't have to ask you anymore for barriers and opportunities. I think we elaborated on this subject a lot now. And I think everybody in this talk show learned a lot about the building, the advising and the financing side and the barriers we have. I'm happy to see and to hear that there's also a lot of opportunities and we're close to this system shift. Next year we'll talk about that.
And if anyone would like to help us finance this project, we welcome investors.
Are you looking at Hein? No.
We've already
Thanks.
spoken to Hein.
I would like to thank you all for being here, and I'd like to thank you for watching this talk show on circular barriers and opportunities. You'll have to say breaking the barriers. Tomorrow, as mentioned, we have in this same studio at the same time the Urban Mining Collective. I have Erik Koremans here from New Horizon, and we'll talk about all the opportunities they see and the collective is really doing and working on in the built environment. Many thanks. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.